Hi, everyone. It is, let me take a second to think, Thursday, February 16th. I am joining you live from the East Coast. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, and thank you so much for joining me. I got quite a bit of questions to answer. I'll start with the interest of love, just so you know what to expect. There will be spoilers because I'm going to be talking about the ending. And then crash course in romance, and then some general questions that I got from you guys. Hello, hi guys. Tell me where you're calling in from. Would love to know who's joining me. It's morning on the East Coast. It's probably evening for some of you guys all the way across the world, and somewhere in between. Morning for the West Coast. Yes, Noona's here. All right, let's get started. First of all, thank you so much for your responses to our love story. I decided to do that, and I wanted to feature my husband because, first of all, we're talking belongingness. My husband is the core of the work that I do, and I wanted you guys to hear a little bit about his perspective on our love story and how we got started. And there's much more. So there's not only going to be a part 2, probably a 3 and 4, because we've been married almost 25 years this April, and we're we're thinking a lot about just our relationship, right? And because we have kids that are in the dating phase, gosh, that's complicated when you have kids dating. We're using our relationship as examples, right? And kind of going to our own experiences. So I wanted to share the reality of the difficulty that we did go through. And my husband is a hopeless romantic. Love, I believe love can overall conquer all, right? But there's lots of obstacles and still certain things that we're navigating. So I'll share about that, and had a lot to do with, and a lot of you guys asked about class and education and, social status. Yes, that is still a big part of our culture. And it's huge in Korea, but don't forget, my parents are immigrants. So they were very traditional because they left Korea in 1974 with me and then came here. So I grew up with a lot of the traditions. And so my upbringing was pretty traditional. So it was very difficult. And that is why when I counsel people, when they're like, my family disagrees with this, and it's very torturous, I relate, because even if you disagree with your family, and of course I disagreed, hence, I'm married to the guy, right? But I think it was very difficult to go against their wishes. That just innately, you want approval, right? Even if we don't admit it, you want it. So thank you for the support on that. And there'll be more coming on our love story following our marriage and then kids, because we have 4 kids. So we have lots to talk about. So that said, okay, let's talk about interest of love. Okay, so, okay, I tend to watch and rewatch episodes when I'm analyzing. Let's just throw this out there. I'm going to say with interest of love, I didn't even rewatch a single episode. Tells you something, meaning I struggled as well. The words that I'm hearing from people is taptape. It's Korean for like suffocating. You feel like you're choking. You feel like you're, clamped in this corner. That was it. The word that came to mind for me in Korean is kichane. It was really bothersome watching it. You guys know what I mean, right? You're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, hurry up already. The pace was slow, which, generally speaking, I tend to like a little bit more faster pace. But I would say around episode 13 is when I started going, because I felt like, not like I predicted things, but I didn't think we would necessarily get this happy-go-lucky ending. And just confirming, because of your reactions, it's clear that no matter what we say, if we're like, hey, this is unrealistic, and oh my gosh, is this really going to happen? People, those haters out there that go, this is so not going to happen. This isn't realistic. You all do want the happy endings and the fairy tale ever afters. We do. And you know what? Why do we need that? For the sake of our mental health, is because we want that hope, and seeing it is aspirational. Like you want to strive for something and hope that you can have that as well, because life is hard. And we saw a lot of that with relationships, with interest of love. And why was interest of love addictive? Well, for me, I'm going to share my point of view and why I think so. Because we're hoping for closure. So we kept watching going, oh, okay, we want the main leads to get together. Well, I did, right? And that's generally what we want to see, and hoping to see the relationship develop. So we decided to keep watching. That anticipation is a lot of why we keep watching the K-dramas. That's why they do these stories, right? Oh, what's going to happen? And that's why you watch each episode, to see the ending wrapped up in a pretty bow. So that is why it was addicting. Plus the chemistry. So that's why I'll share that I watched, because I did like the chemistry. There was good chemistry very early on, maybe through episode 10. And after that one, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know where this is going. I didn't so much watch for the chemistry, but just at that point, curiosity. I just had to watch to figure out what's going to happen. A lot of you folks said that, is Soo-Young selfish, the main lead, Moon Gang-young's character? Here's what I'm going to say. Nobody is one-sided. In therapy sessions, working with a lot of people, relationships, using my Noonchi to gauge, I can't say one person is one way or the other, but I can say some behavior is selfish, right? Some behavior is toxic. But actually, I'm going to say Soo-Young, the main lead, because she didn't necessarily date Sang-soo, in some sense, I felt that she was unselfish with her relationship to him. Meaning she probably, my interpretation, valued it so much. Obviously, we kept watching because we knew that there was feelings and love and attraction physically, sexually, all of that there. The stuff that you want to see in a romance was there. But I felt like she chose not to engage because she was hurt by him with his hesitation. And by the way, that hesitation that he did, I don't know, in episode 2, like I did have to go back to that going, why was that such a big deal? But again, that's her own insecurity going, I saw you hesitate. So that's, that's hurtful when you see somebody who's about to meet you and then change their mind and then go back to you and you're kind of like second choice, or this person decided to do it as a backup. That is hurtful. So that's her own pride speaking. And she had a lot of pride in that sense. So I don't think she's selfish. Her acts were selfish, but I actually think she was troubled, for the better word to say, bothered, had her own issues, specifically in some sense, let's say this, daddy issues, until she found out toward the end about her father. So a lot of that, and then here's the overarching story. Don't forget, she's grieving. Grief does a lot to somebody's behavior, their whole demeanor. She missed her brother, and you saw pockets of that, right? And it was unresolved in that sense, some sense, because she was still in that anger phase of grief because she targeted her dad about that whole thing. And then later on, we realized it wasn't the dad and, all this stuff, but that grief is critical. So a lot of her behavior came out of that grief, and I have seen grief play out in very unhealthy and toxic ways, some healthy as well, but that's why there's stages to grief. And I felt like she was stuck in the depression, the anger, the testing. She didn't quite reach acceptance. And let's go to, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead as I'm answering this one question about the ending. Let's talk about Soo-Young's character. The ending is where I saw she had resolved some of that grief and closure for her own life with her father, particularly because she was very hurt and angry, depressed by it. And then we see her find out what happened. This is episode 16. Because 4 years, then 4 years passed, right? By the way, the 4 years, you kind of knew there was gonna be some sort of time jump. I really feel like it didn't have to be that long, right? And what happened in between was pretty much nothing. But here's my interpretation. That 4 years was needed for Soo-Young specifically to heal. Then she started a cafe. So these are all spoilers, guys. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. You don't necessarily have to watch it because it is very, very slow. But because of her starting a future happiness cafe, there was all her beautiful artwork. She showed all the places that she visited with Sang-soo, the main lead. That is very critical. I thought it was telling that she thought about him constantly. He was important to her, but she wasn't in a good place and she needed her own healing. So now let's talk about her relationship with the security guard. Oh, I forgot his name. Why she dated him. That, I will say, was not the best behavior, somewhat toxic and selfish, meaning she was hurt, needed something to make her feel better. He was there. He liked her. He expressed it, was very forward, and that worked for her. So I don't agree with that, but in real life, you see that happen all the time. You see people dating folks or giving into something because they express their feelings first. That is real life, folks. This is why, and I'm going to take a little step when I share my own love story, because that's the best way for me to tell you, because I don't want to reveal all the clients that I work with. But the love story for me is I made sure that my husband, back then, pre-boyfriend, said something before I did. That was just me going, I ain't going to say something. I am not going to tell him how I feel. He better say it to me. It was just my values. That's what I wanted. And it doesn't always work that way because obviously it can work the other way around. But for me, in 1995, I was like, he better say it clearly, define it, and be very clear about intentions. Why am I sharing that? Because that's what made me take a leap of faith in a relationship that was long distance. We started long distance and there was no cell phones back then. Okay. So it was landlines, just saying 90s. We didn't have email. I didn't even get there. No emails. We wrote letters. So I had to take that leap of faith as a senior, 21 years old, thinking about my whole life ahead to go, you know what? He shared his feelings and he was very specific. Soo-Young said in episode 1 on their first date, was it episode 1 or 2, that she goes, I don't like this ambiguity. I don't like things being wishy-washy. And that was actually pretty bold of her. I had wished that had remained. But she was not wishy-washy when she said, let's date, to the security guard guy that was like, I like you. He was forward more than Sang-soo. Now, Sang-soo kind of indicated that he was interested, but all those what-ifs in episode 16, he said he wished he had stated it. So you folks, if you are thinking of dating or in a relationship, my goodness, I really meant it when I did the meme of what not to do. There is all that regret. Please say it. It is not easy to share your feelings. You're taking a leap of faith. It may not be reciprocated, but that's the risk you take, right? If you like them enough. Or if you need to confront somebody. I work with this all the time about sharing difficult things with your parents or family or colleagues, and you got to tell them. That is the core of any relationship and interaction, communication. Not saying something, let me tell you, is communication. And that not saying something was pretty much a lot of what we saw. That's why you guys were frustrated, because that non-communication was also a form of saying, I'm not doing anything here. I'm just going to keep doing this unhealthy behavior and going to this relationship. And there was poor decision making, but very realistic. Someone asked, are humans really this complicated that they can complicate a simple and pure emotion like love? Yup. Yes, we complicate things. A lot of my work is conflict, right? Do you know that one topic, and everybody's reality is different. I may think, oh my goodness, we're talking about the same topic for 6 months. But that's people. People see things differently. And yes, you can complicate things because there's emotions involved and there's dynamics. And this is where, remember, I talked about status and education and workplace. Soo-Young had her own insecurities about where she came from. Education is big. And I know some folks, especially in America, we are all about living the American dream. And there's so many people that can achieve great things. So it is not all about education in that sense. However, some of the most brightest people that I know that I work with, I'm talking, they are leaders, they are executives, still struggle sometimes from where they came from. That's kind of what exists in our narrative, right? We all have our struggles, no matter where. You may see a successful person, but you don't know their whole backstory. That's why you love the K-dramas, right? So a lot of people do have an insecurity on their foundation, their upbringing. And that's why when my husband shared, he was very devastated, and he did break up with me only for 24 hours. It didn't last that long. He liked me too much. No, but it was devastating for him. That kind of rocked his world. That's what I mean. And a lot of people will say, gosh, I think that's so petty that that's such a, an emphasis, but that's part of your identity too. Your upbringing, your cultural heritage, your education, your status, good or bad. That's part of it. So Soo-Young had all that going for her. The other thing was, so the ending. I believe, I'll never know. We're never really going to know unless I talk to the writer. What did you really intend? And maybe they meant to intend it for us to interpret it. But I will interpret it in a hopeful way because that's what it seemed like to me. Episode 16. In fact, let me tell you guys, I wish episode 16 was like episode 8. And then 8 to 16 was the complications of them being together and fighting hurdles and navigating her brother's grief and him, all that stuff. That actually could have been earlier. But a lot of the what ifs they went through, clearly they wish they could do it over, is my interpretation. When you go down the what if hole, you want to redo things. That's the indication to me. And the indication was that, he also had his own healing to do and maybe growth and, become more determinate on what he wanted out of his life. She had a lot. And I felt like she was at that place to begin dating. So there are folks that I see that aren't ready to date. And then guess what I'll say? I'll actually be like, hey, you're not ready to be in a long-term relationship, like a committed relationship. Why don't you date around? And there is a such thing as dating around, not cheating, but because you're not in a committed relationship, but getting to know other people and kind of go on dates. Even though I would say, some people say, oh, they say that's more trending. I go, no, there are times that I say you got to do that to know what you want. And then watch the K-drama. So here's the other question. Do you think K-dramas are healthy to watch when you're single and you wish you were dating? There's no yes or no answer, except I think they're more healthier than not. For instance, I really meant when I said, when you look at interests of love, look at what not to do. That's why you guys were frustrated. And it was like, and there's some people who goes, I decided not to even finish watching. Okay. So you got a good glimpse of what you don't want. And you're like, that's not what I'm going to do. Take that as a learning lesson. There are times when people watch K-dramas and they feel a little sad because they're not in a relationship, or it makes them think of something else. Yeah, if it really gets bothersome, then you can stop. And there are times when I'm going to say it again. I'm very picky about what I watch because things bother me. Things remind me of my work, or things trigger me. Why would I keep watching that? There are times I will watch because what are the hard ones? Like The Glory or Tomorrow, that are a little darker, that are not my normal genre, that are very well done for analysis sake and to help my clients and just talk a little bit about those issues. But I will stop a K-drama. I have, and you can too. And so I still think it's healthier than not to watch, because there's things that you're learning, especially when you're single. Here's the reality. A lot of the K-drama storytelling themes are realistic. I'm going to say it again. They are realistic. The scenarios are not necessarily, who's flying in from where and all these rags to riches. Not necessarily. But I just gave you a glimpse of my love story. And my husband and I are at opposite ends of the spectrum. But at the end of the day, it was about our personalities and the opposites attract, and what our core values were that brought us together. And that's kind of translated into a K-drama. So that's why I say it's like a love story of a K-drama, because it's true, and that's ours. And so I do believe that exists. So I do want you to watch. But if you feel sad, maybe that's not the one to watch, right? And I know lots of folks who couldn't watch certain dramas about grief because it triggered them about their grief. So I said, don't watch that, and come back to it when you're ready. And there's lots that I've come back to, or I forgot about, watched it, I was like, and then I end up finishing. And so that's my answer to that question. And thanks for sharing that. Yeah, by the way, oh gosh, I didn't even I'm just so busy looking through your questions. Are K-dramas motivational? Yes. They're aspirational too. You aspire to be like what you're watching, or you want that, or you desire this relationship. You want this marriage. You want that family. That's all good to aspire to. If we don't have hope in this world, then what's the point of change? So hope for a better life. Yes. I mean, every day my work is about hope. When I'm talking about the dark things of trauma and grief and mental health, why do I show these K-trauma clips? Because I want to show that there's hope and what this looks like. The emotions that you feel, you hope they'll get better. Hope is what we live for. And that builds our resilience. So yes, they are motivational. How can people improve their mental health and lifestyle? With K-drama, sorry. I believe you can. Now, here's a disclaimer. Please remember this. It is not meant to replace anything in your life. It is not a replacement for therapy. It is a coping technique, a coping tool. It's a form of escapism when you need it. But that is why you always hear me say a dose, and a dose can mean different things. People are like, could a dose mean a whole series? No, not in my opinion. Not in one day. I have binged some. Like the most I've binged in one night, especially a work night, was 2.5 episodes, and that was Love to Hate You. Because I was like, oh, this is fun, right? And they're short. I feel like they're a little shorter. But if it's taking you away from your responsibilities, you'll end up being more stressed in life. And then I'm going to say, then you're watching, or your viewership has teetered on unhealthy. Scale back or save it for the weekends. Again, you don't have to listen to me, but that's me saying your mental health can get worse when you're more stressed because you don't do your job in real life. Or in real life, you have these unrealistic expectations, which do happen. But remember, this is a K-drama. It's all about storytelling. It's meant to be dramatic. Just look inside the people. Like, why do we like the people? What did you like about Sang-soo, if there's anything? Or Soo-Young? Was there anything? Maybe not. Maybe that's not the best example. Maybe it's more crash course in romance examples. What did you like about them? And bring it out. And that's going to help your mental health. Or maybe you see a situation and it reminds you of something that you went through, or it reminds you of something you're going through, and it helps you through that. That's how I want you to use them. Remember, I want you to watch these K-dramas with some life lessons. Like you going, guess what I did, Jeannie? Because I watched this, I decided to approach my mom. When I heard that a couple days ago, and I went, oh my goodness, that's exactly why I love the storytelling there, because you can learn how to approach difficult topics. And you also see people going through very different things in your life. We all relate in a different way. Let's be clear. We all relate in a different way. So you're not going to relate to every drama and every person, right? And then, okay, lastly, Crash Course in Romance is my ultimate favorite K-drama at this point. Not ultimate favorite, just ultimate at this point. Love to Hate You is kind of up there, but Crash Course in Romance has that depth that I look for. And all these, in episode 10 alone, so Interest of Love, didn't rewatch one single episode to even talk about it with you guys. I just remember it. Crash Course in Romance, watched episode 10 like 3.5 times. I was like, let me go back to this, because that was a really good one for me. And I think I watched some of the earlier episodes because I'm using it for my own analysis, and it cheers me up. So I am enjoying it, and I want to say the education part is what I love about their portrayal of it is it's a little lighthearted. Sky Castle, which took me like a year to watch, was triggering and dark. Extracurricular is another good example. And some of the other ones that you see that show school is a little more intense, right? Crash Course has that lightness that I feel like we need to see, but you also see the intensity and the moms. By the way, that exists in the U.S. I mean, I want to tell you, when I was enrolling my kids in preschool, okay, whoever's a mom might relate. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, this preschool stuff, to apply for preschool in the lottery to get in, it wasn't based on obviously merit or grades, but it was based on lottery and first come, first serve. It was so intense. And then we were like, what preschool did your kids go to? What school did your kids go to? It exists here where I am amongst moms, and it can get very toxic. So that's really realistic. And so I'm going to say my least favorite part is that, but they add to the story. They're needed. You need a little bit of that antagonism to enjoy the protagonist and the heroes and the wonderful themes that we see. So I believe Crash Course is going to show us a full arc with the moms. And one of the moms already said, Tanji's mom, which is Hei's best friend's mom, said, you need to apologize to Hei's mom, right? That was and I know you guys like that as well. And that's maybe what we may see. That's just my prediction. That's how K-dramas work. But that's very realistic in that sense. Okay, lastly, my favorite K-drama. My ultimate favorite K-drama, someone asked me that, and I want to answer it again because I keep thinking, is it going to shift? So far at this point, it is still my Mister. It is still my Mister. Some other ones are very close up, but the ones that I look at the most, and probably the clips I tend to use the most, because I was looking at my work yesterday in the clips, is my Mister. I mean, I think it's like one clip extra that I use of my Mister. Very close behind has been Crash Landing, because not Crash Landing is my favorite. Crash Landing clips. Crash Landing is up there, but no, my Mister. Even people are like, "Oh, Jeannie, that's your favorite." It's kind of slow. It's melancholy, but I remember how it hit me on all levels when I was watching, and that one I've seen multiple times. And that's where you actually see the reality of life, workplace, harshness of life, change. And it goes like this, like that. It goes like that, right? Interest of Love was like maybe like this and then like this, and then plateaued. And then other dramas tend to go like this. But my Mister is like literally a huge upward slope of hope and happiness. I highly recommend. Yes. Oh, well, thanks for sharing that. So some folks, because I recommended, they're like, Jeannie, my Mister was stressful, depressing. I have friends who couldn't make it past episode 8, but then they wanted to, because I kept telling them you would see a shift. But it's, again, this is my favorite. Your favorites could be very different. So if it does stress you out, please stop, right? And there were times when I was watching something like episode 4 or 5 for a clip in one of my workshops, and I was like, oh, that's sad. So I felt it too, right? But that is my all-time favorite K-drama at this point. Close behind is probably Extraordinary Attorney Woo, and I use a lot of clips from there as well. And that said, okay, I can see as a therapist how Mr. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, check my Mr. It's on Netflix here in the US. So it's pretty easily accessible. I also believe it's on Viki. But it's IU, who I think does beautiful acting. And then Lee Sung-gyun from Parasite. He's been in a lot. He's in Payback right now. He's very good, and it's all about kindness. So that's why I recommend it. Lastly, going back to my own love story, again, if you guys are just joining, I shared it because I wanted to show the reality of, yes, right now, we are still married, knock on wood, going on 25 years. But by the way, I can't believe it's been 25 years. I mean, we actually went, what? But we're very reflective these days because I work with a lot of young folks. People ask me all the time. And so I asked my husband, I want to show you more because you have a lot of good stuff to say. So you probably see my husband a lot more. By the way, through Interest of Love, he was like, oh my gosh, the entire K-drama. Like, I wish I videotaped it, but I'm so focused and I want to watch it that I was like, what? Why are you saying, oh my gosh? He's like, seriously? Because he's yelling at the screen. And I'm like, I'm a little more patient because I'm in that field, right? And then by episode 13, 14, he's like, why are we still watching? But because you want to see what's happening. By then, you're well invested. So Interest of Love, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time. You can learn what not to do. You can learn, wow, I think I could act that way sometimes. I better say this stuff. Or wow, I really like that this guy or girl asked me out, but I don't think they're best for me, so maybe I don't proceed in that relationship, right? So again, look at the examples of what you can learn from that don't work. I think that's it, guys. For now, I will say farewell so I can get ready for my day. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys know where to reach me. Continue DMing. I do check each and every one. Sometimes I screenshot them and save them. And so eventually maybe I'll share some of my favorite screenshots. But I want you to know that. And I'll answer the most that I can at any given point. But crash course, yes, here, let me see if I can answer some of these questions since I have a couple minutes. I'm not watching, so yes, people ask me about a lot of other K-dramas. Given my time, and because I really focus on quality when I'm watching, because I'm really watching, right? I'll stop and pause and go, and really just get into it. I get really into it. You guys think you get into it? So do I. Maybe you don't see that, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? That I can only really watch no more than 2 at a time. At one point I watched 3 and I was like overwhelmed. So right now, besides Love to Hate You that I'm finishing up, super cute, funny, I'm cracking up like silly. And I'm not watching that with my husband because now I'm so far in, he's way behind. So he's going to have to catch up because I kept binging it. You're like, next. And the Crash Course in Romance. And then the some on Viki that I put on hold, I'm going to go back to eventually when they're done. So that's all I really can handle right now because my schedule's getting crazy. Older K-dramas? Okay, real quick. Oh my goodness, there's so many. If we're going to go from 2016 and under, so right, Goblin, Reply 1998, My Love from the Star, Oh My Venus, even The Inheritors, I like all those. I Hear Your Voice. You have, oh my gosh, the 2020, I'm going through all the years. I Hear Your Voice, by the way. Someone brought it up to me recently in a session, and I rewatched some clips. That is a really good one. That's with Lee Jong-suk and Lee Bo-young, who's starring in The Agency right now, which I'm not able to watch. And so I will tell you now, if you guys are running out of things to watch, which you shouldn't, by the way, because there's so many, but if you're kind of in a lull, go back to the old ones. If you have Viki, they have all the old ones from really early to Winter Sonata. I mean, those are the classics. Look at some of, and maybe study yourself. Look at the progression of K-dramas and relationships and how they've shifted. You will not like the way the guys are acting in the earlier K-dramas, because some of them I'm seeing them going, ooh, But like the wrist grabbing, I still think you see the wrist grabbing. But I don't like that. I'm like, yeah, can you just not grab the wrist? But it's actually very Korean. I saw my family members do it. I'm like, oh, they grab the wrist. I'd rather you grab the hand or the arm, like putting your arms in. But that's part of the culture. Old ones, 2010. I mean, The Greatest Love, I think, is 2011. One of my all-time favorites. That is actually where I fell in love with Kong Hyo-jin. Absolutely adore that one. And if you want a great love story, then watch that one. Who's the other guy? The guy from Our Blues. Forget his name. Super awesome. So there's so many. Maybe I'll have to go through the old ones. Oh, Navalera? That's not even that old. I thought people meant really old. Like, I'm thinking old as in early 2000s and mid 2000s. But anything in the last 2-3 years to me is more brand new. Our Blues, Flower of Evil, all of Green Mothers Club. Yes, you know what? Green Mothers Club was also triggering a little bit for me, so I didn't talk about it much. That's a really good one. That's if you're, you have to be in the mood for that. Hometown Cha-Cha, of course. The King's Affection, Our Blues. My Liberation Notes is also up there for me. Highly recommend. Slower paced, but it also has a really cute, I would say, love story involved too. Underrated, not like the glamorous, but really glamorous when it came to the feelings. That's all I'm going to say. Because sometimes you look at that, and that's where the scenarios are more realistic, My Liberation Notes, but then you see the love just as romantic, I think. And some of the most romantic love stories are understated. The Greatest of Love is one of those. It's not about this, let me woo you away. It was all about the emotion. So I'm going to stop a few minutes behind than my schedule. Thank you so much for joining me. You know where to reach me, and I'll see you again soon. Have a good night or rest of the day.